Hey, what's up everyone? This is HeroMonsterPiano. I'm deciding to do a completely different kind of video today. Today I'm going to be ranking every Star Wars movie from worst to best. And I'm doing this because the Star Wars Episode 9 trailer just came out and I'm a huge fan and I've been watching all these videos and getting really into it again. These are my favorite movies of all time, and I know that everything on my channel has been mostly skillet or at least music related. So this is just a wild video, but I really don't care. I think there's probably some Star Wars fans on my channel, and even if this gets only a few views, maybe some of you will enjoy it. So I'm going to be giving my opinions on the Star Wars movies from what I think are the worst to the best, and I probably have an unpopular opinion on some of these movies, but that's the fun of it. I hope I can hear some of your thoughts on your favorites and your least favorites. So I'm not including the Clone Wars movie or the Holiday Special or the Ewok movies, and if you want to know, they'd all be at the bottom anyways. So, at number 10 is Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, this is not a bad film in any way. I actually enjoyed it because I really had no expectations for this movie coming in. I like the Han Solo actor. He did a great job, and Chewbacca was fun as well. Lando was decent. There was nothing really terribly wrong with it. I just felt like, as far as the whole saga goes, it wasn't really that needed, and I found many parts of the movie just dragged a little bit too long. It was a little slow, and overall, it's not quite as entertaining or dramatic as the rest of them. I find myself kind of thinking about other things while I was watching it because it wasn't really holding my attention quite as well as some of the other movies. So there's nothing wrong with it, nothing really terrible about it, just is a decent movie, and that's why it's at the bottom of the list. At number 9 is Episode 8, The Last Jedi. And this is a divisive film. Many of you might have this higher. Many might agree with me that it's one of the lower films. I like Rey and Kylo Ren in this movie. I think any scene that they're in is much more interesting than any of the scenes without them. I think that almost every other character was changed in a way or given bad storylines to go through, like Finn and Rose going to the casino planet that really did not accomplish anything, or this dragged out space chase where they're running out of fuel, like that's an interesting plot line, or so many things where they just throw curveballs at you to throw curveballs just for the heck of it. And Luke Skywalker's character just being completely misinterpreted and not the same person that we know him in the trilogy. And so this was a very disappointing film after, thinking about what happened and what it really did to the whole saga as a whole. It felt like it was a completely different direction than J.J. Abrams set up in Episode 7. And so that is why I could rant on forever. I don't like The Last Jedi. It's my least favorite episode film. But not by much, because the next episode is almost just as bad. It is The Phantom Menace, Episode 1. Now, this film has some great moments, just like The Last Jedi. This movie has a great villain, Darth Maul, and I guess Darth Sidious, but he's more in the shadows at this point. Great action sequences with the lightsabers in this film, and the pod racing sequences are so fun. There's great things about this movie. Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon, he does a great job, and Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. But then you have the things that just drag this film, which is kind of the ridiculous dialogue and characters like Jar Jar and little Anakin and some other just goofy things about the movie that really take away from what Star Wars is all about. And so it's not a terrible film. There are some great moments, and I think that the visuals and the originality of it, opening the prequels up, does a great job to open up this world of Star Wars, but there are definitely a lot of flaws with the film. The next film in my list is Rogue One. And I love this movie. It's a great movie. This is where almost all the films I love. These are all great Star Wars films. I would put Rogue One at this spot because, all in all, I don't really care about the main characters quite as much as the other films. They did a great job for having just one movie, but the only character that you really know from any other movie is Darth Vader, which his scene is my favorite scene in the whole movie. But as far as Jin and Cassian and some of these other people, their story is great for a single film. They do a great job, and it's a definitely different tone than other Star Wars movies. It's more of a war movie, and I love the different aspect of it, and that's why it's higher than 8 and 1. Those are episodes, but this film did a great job of doing a standalone movie, and I love a lot of this movie. It's a great one, but I just love the ones above it a little bit more. So the next one in my list is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I almost put this underneath Rogue One, but I think that the good parts of this movie outweigh the bad stuff, and so I love the action sequences in this film. I love the overarching storyline of this film. It has a great plot on paper. Anakin's kind of slow fall as an adult to the dark side with his mother dying and then falling in love with Padme, and all these different things. You learn about the Separatists and Count Dooku, and you've got this huge arena scene and the duel with Yoda and Count Dooku. There's so many great parts of this movie, but the bad part about this movie is the dialogue. The dialogue just makes it hard to watch nowadays, and so that is really its biggest flaw, is the corny and cheesy lines done between Anakin and Padme is really the worst of it. So the next film is Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I think that this film is awesome. It was a lot of fun to see Star Wars back. I actually quite enjoy all the new characters. I thought they set up the story in a great way. The biggest downside to this movie is that it's basically a mirror of A New Hope. You've got the hero, and you've got the old mentor character that dies from the villain to give them this big sacrifice, and there's a Death Star that blows up, and so there's so many things that happen just like Episode 4 in this movie, and so it is weighed down by nostalgia, but in a way it helps to kind of ease in all the new characters and all the new ideas coming into it. And so I think it did a good job of story building and setting up a new trilogy. Unfortunately, Episode 8 did not continue the story quite as well as 7 had set it up for. And so I'm hoping Episode 9 can wrap up the story that he started, J.J. Abrams, in a meaningful way to wrap up the entire saga. But as far as this film, I do enjoy it quite a bit. The next movie on the list, this is where all of them are just amazing. These are like my favorite films of all time, and it's hard to rank these because this is really what separates the good ones from the really, really great ones. And so the next film is Return of the Jedi, Episode 6. This movie, in my opinion, I never really enjoyed Jabba's palace and the Sarlacc pit and all that as much. It seemed kind of annoying to watch, all the weird creatures and the Rancor and the, Boba Fett dying in a funny way. The whole beginning of it felt kind of silly to me, and so does the Moon of Endor with all the Ewoks. In general, I don't enjoy this movie as much as the rest of the original trilogy. I mean, of course, there's great scenes in between all of this, but really the meat and potatoes of the film, so as to say, is the final confrontation between Luke, Vader, and the Emperor. That is really the core of this movie, and I will keep coming back to those scenes because those are some of the best scenes, if not my favorite sequence of any Star Wars film. The ending to Return of the Jedi with Luke, Vader, and the Emperor is probably my favorite thing in the whole saga. But as far as the rest of the film, I get a little bored, and I think it's a little bit silly with the Ewoks and Jabba the Hutt. And it's not bad. It's certainly not bad. It's still ahead of all the other Star Wars movies. But compared to 4 and 5 of the original trilogy, it just seems a little odd. But the ending with Vader redeeming himself and all of that is some of my favorite to ever come from the saga. So that is why it is high on my list. The next movie is A New Hope, Episode 4. And this is what started it all. This is the original, amazing film, just so classic. I mean, it's the first film to have any of the music, to introduce all these characters, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Darth Vader. I mean, classic characters, and the Death Star, and X-Wings, and I mean, of course, everything Star Wars comes from this film, and so what can I say? I mean, it's the first one, it's classic. It's aged a little bit with time because it's so simplistic and a little bit, it's not quite as exciting as some of the movies that came after it, but it still has an amazing story and flow to it. The simple farm boy who becomes a hero by the end and destroys the Death Star. It's just a classic movie. You could watch it alone and you could be satisfied because this is just a great Star Wars movie. Next on my list, and if I say the next one, you'll realize what's number one. The next film on my list is Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. This is almost my number one spot, and it has jumped back and forth, but I have to stick to my heart on what I think is number one. So number 2 is Episode 5, and what can I say about this movie either? I mean, the opening with Hoth and everything that happens there is so amazing. The AT-ATs versus the snow speeders, and then it turns into this chase between Luke's friends, and then Luke going to Dagobah and meeting Yoda for the first time, and the confrontation between Luke and Vader, where he finally reveals that he's his father. So these are some of the best things to ever come from Star Wars, and Lando and Cloud City. So many amazing things from this film, and the way it ends on a cliffhanger with Han Solo taken in captivity, and Luke losing a hand and being told this great family reveal, and basically the heroes losing, is really what an amazing sequel should do. This is the perfect sequel to the original, and it improves in every way, story-wise, what the original did, and even the special effects and the action sequences and the music. Everything about it is amazing, and it is basically a perfect Star Wars film. I just like another film better, and that is number one, my favorite Star Wars film, and actually my favorite film of all time, is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And some people are probably going to already be on their keyboard typing, "Oh my gosh, how is that your favorite? That's a prequel, and that one sucks." But people my age and a lot of other Star Wars fans are starting to agree that this is my favorite, and it's an amazing movie. The story of this film is the most dramatic and most emotional out of the whole saga. The character of Anakin Skywalker and his fall to the dark side because of his fears of losing Padme and trying to save her, but ultimately getting seduced by the power of the dark side by Darth Sidious, and all these things, him versus Obi-Wan. It's just an emotional ride, and the kind of descent into the darkness, but then setting up for A New Hope, with Luke and Leia being born at the end. Everything just ties together into the original trilogy just perfectly, and the music and the story and the characters, everything about this film is just so emotional and done amazingly, and that is why it is my favorite movie, because it is just the most dramatic, and it's my favorite. I hope you liked my list. Tell me what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys later. Peace.